Good evening. A while back, I watched a couple interesting documentaries. One was about Scientology, the other one was about the Hare Krishna movement. And one of the common threads that I noticed between the two documentaries was that people born into these groups had this incredible sense of privilege, that they were in a world where everybody was in darkness except for their group, who really understood life, the universe, and everything. And along with this sense of privilege came a sense of responsibility. Now, this will sound familiar for anybody raised in a high control group or authoritarian religion or cult. They all give this sense of being special, that only we have a true understanding of our world. Mormons, if you're a former Mormon, this will sound familiar. And if you're like myself, a former Jehovah's Witness, you will relate to this very much. Now, with that in the back of your mind, what I'd like to talk about is something I'm going to refer to as lucid moments. The word lucid means easily understood, completely intelligible, or comprehensible. But I'm talking about the second definition, which is characterized by clear perception or understanding, rational or sane. We use this definition frequently when referring to people who have dementia. They are often in a state of confusion. Perhaps they're trapped in a memory. They're not fully present. They don't recognize loved ones. They don't understand when it is, where they are, unless they're lucid. And then all of a sudden, they can recognize their husband, their daughter. They know where they are, why they're there, and we call that being lucid when somebody has Alzheimer's, dementia. Another way we use the word is in the phrase lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is something we experience when we are dreaming and understand that it's a dream. This is something I've only had happen a few times, where all of a sudden in the dream you think, okay, this isn't real, I'm in a dream. And some people have actually practiced this by keeping dream journals. You can do research online on how to master lucid dreaming. And what I want to talk about is very similar to both of those. And it's kind of hard to describe the feeling, but it's something that I experienced as a believing Jehovah's Witness from a pretty early age, at least since teenage years, maybe even earlier, well before I ever had what I would call a tangible doubt or a question about my belief system or doctrine or anything like that. And so I experienced it early in life, right on through all those periods of doubt that I struggled with before I finally woke up. So I would experience it in various different settings, and I'm just going to paint one picture that I remember vividly because it was reoccurring. This is something that would happen to me fairly often, but it happened in other settings as well. But imagine yourself in a movie theater. You've gone to the movies with other Jehovah's Witnesses. So you're there with maybe your parents, 3 or 4 friends. So say there's 6, there's 7 of you. You're sitting in a row and you're surrounded by a full theater of people who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. Just you and your few associates are Jehovah's Witnesses. Everyone else there is what you would have called worldly. And that means that they all have their own belief systems, their own worldviews, their own upbringing. And after a while, the movie starts, and this story unfolds on the screen. And in the story, there are characters that are experiencing their own journey, and they have their upbringing and worldview. And these characters in this story has nothing to do with Jehovah's Witnesses and Jehovah's Witness ideologies and belief system. And those characters are played by actors who have memorized their lines. They've gone to school to learn to be actors, and they have their lives, and they have their backgrounds, and they have their hopes and dreams. And then there is the writer who conceived of this story and had a moral or a message that he wanted to convey. And again, has nothing to do with Jehovah's Witness ideologies or Jehovah's Witness worldview. And you have the director, and you have the cinematographer, you have the person who made the score, and countless other people behind the scenes. All of them have their own hopes and dreams and worldview and background and values and upbringing. And it's kind of like being a frog inside a well, whose whole life, since being a tadpole, was lived in that well. And one day that frog, if you can imagine the frog being conscious enough to comprehend this, one day the frog looks up and sees what he always assumed was the ceiling of his world, the only world he knew. He sees the top of it, and a bird flies by, or an airplane goes over. And there's this sudden glimpse of this possibility that this isn't the real world. The real world is out there. And that's what it was like sitting in this movie theater for me. It was like getting a glimpse of the possibility that the world I know isn't the real world. That's a lucid moment. And I think it could be experienced in a lot of different ways. Just this sense that things aren't what they seem. So why am I bringing this up? What's the point of this? Well, I'd like to address three different groups. First of all, if there are any active Jehovah's Witnesses watching this video, or active members of any high control or cult-like religion, you have probably experienced something like this. A sense that something is off. And you have tried to suppress it because it's scary. And you've been told that you are special, you are unique, you are in the only organization on the planet that has the truth and understands our world. So when you have a thought that's contrary to that, even if it's not a tangible thought, you push it away. I'm going to suggest the possibility that this is your mind telling you something isn't right. Trust that. And let your mind explore it. Explore the possibility that you're in the matrix, so to speak. That you are in a well. And that the real world is out there. Think outside the box. For the second group I'd like to address would be those who identify as former Jehovah's Witnesses, which is probably what most of you are. That's what I identify as. We're awake. We're not, it's not a matter of dreaming and lucid dreaming. We're wide awake. We know that we were dreaming and that we are now in the real world. We've come out of the well, so to speak. The problem with indoctrination is that even after you let go of it, there's still a process of what's called post-cult trauma. And it can last for years. There's a lot of symptoms, and I want to do a video just on that subject soon. But a lot of it has to do with falling back into cult thinking, black and white thinking, wondering what if they're right. This is something that people who exit any cult will experience and they'll struggle with. So what's the answer? If we surround ourselves with former Jehovah's Witnesses and all of our thoughts and conversation is all about Jehovah's Witness and ex-Jehovah's Witness issues, we're keeping our thought process so close to these deeply ingrained ruts of indoctrination that it's hard to keep from tripping and falling in them. So my suggestion is to, in order to keep yourself in a comfortable state of awakeness, is to step away from that world. And I'm preaching to myself here, because when I do that, I can feel myself getting grounded in reality. So step away from the XJW world. Spend time with people who have never been indoctrinated. Explore different worldviews. Get to know people of a variety of backgrounds. Get out there. Go to movies. Go to plays. Learn to play an instrument. Do anything that's not related to that XJW world. That has value too, and you need to do your research so that you fully understand that you made the right choice. But at some point, you really need to start widening out, to borrow a phrase that you will be very familiar with if you are a former Jehovah's Witness. So the third group I want to address would be those who do not identify as former Jehovah's Witnesses or Jehovah's Witnesses. And this is a group that I hope to be a part of at some point. Being a Jehovah's Witness and a former Jehovah's Witness will always be part of my history, but it's not the way I want to identify forever. Right now, it's such a big part of me because it's so fresh, it's so raw for me, and I know for many of you. But at some point, I just want to be me. I'll have other things that I identify primarily as. So that's who I'm addressing now. People who either never were a Jehovah's Witness or any cult member, and who also don't identify as a former member. We have entered into society, okay? We're part of the real world, functioning in the real world. My suggestion or recommendation for such ones, and I'm speaking to my future self hopefully, is to avoid stepping into another well. We've come out of a well, don't go in another well. So obviously that means don't enter another high control group. That goes without saying. But not all wells are as deep as a cult. I mean, we're all in danger of getting trapped in one way of thinking, one worldview. Take politics, for example. Confirmation bias applies to all subjects, and try not to let yourself be so set in your ways on any given subject that you're not willing to consider the possibility that you're wrong. I think it's important for everybody to consider other worldviews, to have deep conversations with people you don't agree with, and consider the possibility. It always should be a possibility that you don't have the full picture of things, and that you can learn. So those are my thoughts. Lucid moments. Tell me about your lucid moments as a Jehovah's Witness, or a Mormon, or a member of the Exclusive Brethren, or whatever the case might be. Explain what your process was that led you to first start doubting, in the comments below. I thank you for watching, and I will catch up with you soon.